So our next speaker is Priscille Kulczyk, based in Warsaw and working with, in Poland and with ECLJ. She has a research fellow for ECLJ and holds a master in family law and a license in canon law. And ECLJ has prepared a very important report about the situation of ex-Muslims in France. So I welcome you to share your thoughts. And so welcome, Priscille. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon. I want to start by thanking the representation of Poland for having made this OSCE event possible, and of course the other organizers of this side event for giving me the opportunity to address a topic that is not well known yet, and however it is a growing and serious issue for Europe, for our society, and for the rule of law. This will be a very concrete intervention, as I'm merely reporting about facts that my NGO, the ECLJ, was told by witnesses. I am summarizing what dozens of ex-Muslims living in Europe told us, what they directly experienced, and what other ex-Muslims they know went through. I will focus on the issues, the difficulties, or in many instances, we can say the persecution of ex-Muslims in Europe because they chose to convert to Christianity. A word about the context first, with the first slide. Ex-Muslim Christians are entangled in between other wider issues related to religious freedom. Two of them being the very strong growth of Islam in Europe through migrations and the general anti-Christian trend. I wanted to illustrate this with a couple of examples. On the left of the slides, you can see a newspaper title, Christian Migrants Allegedly Thrown into the Sea by Muslims off the coast of Italy. It is merely to show you in one example, the issue of religious freedom in the migration process and how difficult it can be in migration camps to have this religious freedom guaranteed, especially for Christians as they are a minority. On the bottom right, you can see the door of a French church with graffiti. This is one example among so many of the churches and cemeteries desecrated each year. Last year, at least 857 anti-religious acts were reported in France against Christians only. This is an everyday news story in France and in other European countries. On the top right, you can see a man speaking to a priest. He actually insulted that priest in Arabic before spitting on him in Bordeaux, while the priest was sprinkling holy water on the faithful crowd. That occurred in February this year, and there was a similar trouble in Paris 2 months before, with Muslims insulting Christians during a public procession. And on the bottom left, there is the picture of the French priest Jacques Hamel, who had his throat cut through by a radical Muslim while he was saying his mass in a church 6 years ago. In the middle of this, many Muslims question their faith. Some of them leave Islam and join a Christian denomination. This should be effectively guaranteed in Europe as part of religious freedom of each individual. However, people leaving Islam for another religion face almost systematically persecution, and you have here on the slide two emblematic cases. On the top, Nisar Hussain, a British citizen from Pakistani origins, who was violently assaulted near his car and home by two Muslims who waited for him and beat him up with a baseball bat because he left Islam and became a Christian. In the bottom, you can see the case of Hatun Tash, who was stabbed in broad daylight on Speaker Corner, public square in London, for criticizing Islam and the Quran. She's from a Muslim and Turkish background. She converted to Christianity and is nowadays living in the UK. That knife attack was the recent culmination of years of harassment, because she's considered as an apostate who publicly criticizes Islam. This is what is going on in Western Europe, in OSCE countries. In Europe, of course, every Muslim living Islam is not necessarily violently persecuted, but it is certain that he or she will be in trouble at some point, either within his or her family or with the Muslim community around him or her. There are two main reasons for that persecution. The first one is because it is clearly forbidden in Islam to convert to another religion. You have here the quotes. I will not dwell on the controversies around the interpretation of the Quran, the Hadiths, the application of Sharia and the different schools. The fact is that apostasy laws are currently enforced in a dozen of Muslim countries, and those who persecute apostates do it because of this text and because of the undeniable Islamic tradition. It may be a radical application of Sharia law, but that law is being applied, and many imams and Muslims seek to apply Sharia law in many OSCE states. The other key aspect to understand this persecution is the community aspect in Islam. Many would speak of communitarianism. Community is so important, far away from our current and strong individualistic European way of life. And Muslims live within the community, and the family ties are almost unbreakable. And therefore, when one leaves Islam, it is a shock, a shame, a major event. The person is actually leaving the family. This will result in a series of events that the ECLJ classified according to their seriousness and frequency. So here on the slide you have the acts of persecution toward the converts. As my time is limited, but I let you read the list. And I will add simply two things. The first 3 points are the most common, and practically all of the ex-Muslims the ECLJ met experienced these acts. The other acts are thankfully fewer, but still significant. And if murders are very rare, they do occur sometimes. We have first-hand testimonies for each of these acts, and you can read more about it in our report. So, what answers to this? Briefly, it's essential to raise awareness among society and especially church leaders, as they need to take care of converts, to guide them and to welcome them. Most of the priests and pastors do not know the risks that an ex-Muslim takes when he or she leaves Islam to embrace another religion. Most of the converts lose practically everything. Therefore, they look for a new family. It is a bit similar for the state and society. Social services must be aware of the specific risks converts from Islam face, especially young girls who often urgently need somewhere to sleep when they are fleeing their home. And of course, laws must be enforced to guarantee religious freedom. Earlier I told you about this man who insulted and spat on the priest in Bordeaux. He was recently convicted and sentenced to a citizenship training course. It may be appropriate, but we can wonder if it is really dissuasive. I will stop here, but there's more to know. So you can download our complete report on those questions or with this QR code and watch a 1-hour video containing interviews with many witnesses on our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Merci, Priscille. Thank you very much for sharing. And I recommend people to look at the report, especially the recommendations at the end, who actually came from ex-Muslims. And thank you so much for sharing.